My name is Anna Williams and I'm 34 years old. When people see me today, they see a successful federal judge with perfect makeup covering the scars that changed my life forever. But 20 years ago, I was just a 14-year-old girl screaming for help while my own mother held my arms down. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because I'd gotten my report card that day. Straight A's again. I was so proud, running home to show Mama. But when I burst through that front door, she was sitting at the kitchen table with Derek, my stepdad, and empty bottles scattered around them like broken promises. "Look, Mama, all A's," I said, waving that paper like it was gold. Derek snatched it from my hands, his bloodshot eyes scanning the grades. "Think you're better than us, don't you?" he slurred. "Smart little princess needs to be brought down a peg." That's when I saw the iron in his hand, still plugged in, the red light glowing like a devil's eye. Steam was rising from its surface and my blood turned to ice. "Mama, tell him to stop," I pleaded, backing toward the door. But she just sat there, her eyes empty, nodding slowly. "Maybe he's right, baby. Maybe you need to learn some humility." I ran, but Derek was faster. He caught me in the hallway, and when I fought back, Mama appeared behind me. My own mother. The woman who'd sung me lullabies and kissed my scraped knees, grabbed my wrists with hands that felt like iron shackles. "Hold still, Anna," she whispered in my ear. "It'll be over soon." That's when my world shattered. The woman I trusted most in this world had become my captor. The iron came down on my left cheek like liquid fire. The smell hit me first, burning flesh, my flesh. And then the pain exploded through every nerve in my body. I screamed until my voice cracked, begging them to stop, but Mama's grip never loosened. "Please, please, I'm sorry. I won't get good grades anymore." I sobbed, but Derek just pressed harder. "This is what happens to little girls who think they're better than their family," he hissed, his beer breath hot against my face. "Maybe next time you'll remember your place." The iron left a perfect triangle on my cheek, the brand of their hatred seared into my skin forever. But it wasn't the physical pain that broke me. It was looking into my mother's eyes and seeing nothing. No love, no regret, no recognition that she was destroying her own daughter. When they finally let me go, I collapsed on the floor, touching my face and feeling the raised, bubbling skin. Mama stood over me, swaying slightly. "Clean yourself up," she said coldly. "And if you tell anybody about this, we'll say you did it to yourself. Who's gonna believe a troubled kid over two adults?" I stumbled to the bathroom, looking in the mirror at the monster they'd created. The girl staring back had hollow eyes and a ruined face, but something else was growing there too. A rage that would fuel me for the next 20 years. That night, I called my Aunt Rita, Mama's sister who lived 3 states away. Through my tears and broken voice, I told her everything. "Pack a bag, baby," she whispered. "I'm coming to get you." 2 days later, Rita arrived like an angel of mercy, took one look at my face and called the police. But by then Mama and Derek had disappeared, leaving behind only empty bottles and the smell of burned flesh that still haunts my nightmares. Aunt Rita became my guardian angel and my salvation. She drove me straight to the hospital where doctors worked for hours trying to minimize the damage. The social workers asked endless questions, taking pictures of my face from every angle like I was evidence in a crime scene. "Honey, this is going to be a long road," Dr. Martinez told me gently. "The scarring will fade with time, but it'll never completely disappear." I touched the bandages covering half my face. "Will I ever look normal again?" "Define normal," he said with a sad smile. "You'll always be beautiful, Anna. Different but beautiful." Rita held my hand through every surgery, every skin graft, every moment when I wanted to give up. She sold her house to pay for the best plastic surgeons, working double shifts as a nurse to keep us afloat. "Why are you doing all this for me?" I asked her one night after my 3rd reconstruction surgery. "Because your mama forgot how to be a mother," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But I remember what love looks like." The police searched for Mama and Derek for months, but they'd vanished like smoke. I used to lie awake at night, imagining them laughing somewhere, living their lives while I dealt with the aftermath of their cruelty. School was torture. Kids stared, whispered, pointed. Some called me Frankenstein, or pizza face. But every cruel word just fed the fire inside me, the burning desire to prove them all wrong. "I'm going to be somebody," I told Rita one night, studying for my SATs while she worked her overnight shift. "I'm going to make sure people like them can never hurt kids like me again." I know you will, baby, she said, kissing the top of my head. You've got steel in your spine now. He was right. Where once there was just a scared little girl, now there was something harder, sharper, forged in the fire of betrayal. High school graduation came with a full scholarship to State University. I stood on that stage, my face still bearing the faint marks of their hatred, and felt the first taste of victory. Rita cried in the audience, holding up a sign that read, "That's my girl." College was where I discovered my calling. In Professor Washington's criminal justice class, we studied cases of child abuse, and I found myself speaking with an authority that came from lived experience. The system fails when it treats children as unreliable witnesses, I argued during a heated class debate. When adults choose not to believe them because the truth is too uncomfortable to accept. My classmates fell silent. Professor Washington nodded slowly. "Ms. Williams, you should consider law school. Your perspective is exactly what this field needs." That night I called Rita. "I'm going to law school. I'm going to become a prosecutor, then a judge. I'm going to make sure monsters like them face consequences." "Anna, honey, that's wonderful, but have you thought about what happens if you ever see them again?" I touched my cheek, feeling the smooth skin that the surgeries had created. "Every day, Rita. Every single day." Law school was brutal, but every late night studying, every mock trial, every exhausting exam was fuel for my fire. My classmates saw a driven, brilliant woman who never missed a deadline. They didn't see the girl who still woke up screaming sometimes, feeling phantom burns on her face. I graduated summa cum laude, top 5% of my class. The dean shook my hand at graduation, and I saw respect in his eyes. Not pity, not horror, just pure admiration for what I'd accomplished. "You're going places, Ms. Williams," he said. "Sir." "I am." But deep down, I knew there was only one place I really wanted to go, back to face the people who'd tried to destroy me. I spent 10 years as a prosecutor, building an unshakable reputation for being tough on child abuse cases. My conviction rate was 93%, the highest in the state. Lawyers feared facing me in court because I fought for every child with the fury of someone who'd been failed by the system once before. "You're relentless," my colleague David once said after I'd secured a life sentence for a man who'd tortured his stepson. "It's like you take each case personally." "Because I do," I replied, not caring if he thought I was too emotional. Every child I saved was the 14-year-old girl I couldn't save 20 years ago. The day I was nominated for federal judge was the proudest moment of my life. Rita cried when I called her, and I could hear the pride in her voice. "Your mama would be proud," she said softly. "No," I corrected. "A real mother would be proud." She gave up that right when she held me down. The confirmation hearings were intense. Senators questioned my qualifications, my temperament, my ability to be impartial. But when they asked about my scar, barely visible now but still there if you knew where to look, I told them the truth. "This scar reminds me why justice matters," I said into the microphone. "It reminds me that when adults fail children, someone has to stand up for the voiceless." I was confirmed unanimously. Judge Anna Williams. The title felt like armor, like power, like redemption, all wrapped into one. I'd spent 20 years climbing out of the hell they'd tried to bury me in, and now I sat behind a bench where my word was law. But fate wasn't finished with me yet. Because 3 months after I put on those robes for the first time, Detective Adams walked into my chambers with a case file that would change everything. "Your Honor, we need to talk." Detective Adams's hands shook slightly as he placed the file on my desk. "Judge Williams, this is unusual. We've been tracking a couple involved in multiple fraud schemes across several states. Identity theft, welfare fraud, drug trafficking. Small-time stuff, but they've been at it for 20 years. My heart started pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "What does this have to do with me, Detective?" "The woman's name is Sharon Williams. She claims to be your mother." The world tilted. 20 years of wondering where they were, what they were doing, if they ever thought about what they'd done to me. And now here they were, sitting in a jail cell just 50 miles away. "There's more," Adams continued. "When we arrested them, she started talking about having a daughter who abandoned her. Said her daughter was some big-shot judge who never helped her family. She's demanding to see you." I laughed, but it came out bitter and cold. "She wants to see me? After what she did?" Adams looked confused. "Ma'am." I touched my cheek instinctively, feeling for scars that were barely visible now. "Detective, I need you to run their names through the system. Look for any reports involving child abuse from about 20 years ago. An hour later he was back, his face grim. Jesus Christ. Judge Williams, I'm so sorry. The case was never prosecuted because you disappeared and they couldn't locate you for testimony. They didn't disappear, I said quietly. I was rescued. And now, after all these years, they want to play the victim. Ma'am, there's something else. They've been assigned a public defender and their case it's been assigned to your court. The irony was so perfect it almost felt scripted. The woman who'd held me down while her husband branded my face with a hot iron would now stand before me, asking for mercy she'd never shown her own daughter. Your Honor, you'll need to recuse yourself. The conflict of interest is obvious. I stared at that file for a long moment, thinking about that terrified 14-year-old girl who'd begged for help that never came. No, I said finally. I don't think I will. The courthouse buzzer echoed through my chambers as I prepared for the most important day of my career. 20 years of preparation had led to this moment. I adjusted my robes in the mirror, seeing not just Judge Williams, but that scared little girl who'd promised herself justice one day. All rise for the Honorable Judge Anna Williams, the bailiff announced. I walked into my courtroom with my head high, my steps measured and powerful. And there, sitting at the defendant's table in orange jumpsuits, were the two people who'd tried to destroy me. Mama looked older, weathered by 2 decades of running and hiding. Her hair was gray now, her face lined with the consequences of her choices. Derek sat beside her, thinner than I remembered, but still carrying that same cruel smirk that haunted my nightmares. When our eyes met, I saw the exact moment recognition dawned on her face. Her mouth fell open, her hands started trembling. She half stood from her chair before the bailiff pushed her back down. Anna, she whispered, loud enough for the whole courtroom to hear. Baby, is that really you? I settled into my seat behind the bench, feeling the weight of my authority like armor. The court will come to order. We are here for the arraignment of Sharon Williams and Derek Johnson on charges of fraud, identity theft, and drug trafficking. Your Honor, the public defender said, clearly uncomfortable, my clients are requesting to speak with you privately. There appears to be a family relationship. Derek leaned forward, his eyes calculating. Yeah, Your Honor. We need to talk to our daughter. This is all just a big misunderstanding. The audacity took my breath away. After 20 years of silence, after disappearing the moment they thought they might face consequences, now they wanted to claim me as family? The defendants will address the court properly or be held in contempt, I said coldly. Counselor, how do your clients plead? Your Honor, surely we can discuss. How do they plead? Mama was crying now, ugly sobs that echoed through the courtroom. Anna, please, you don't understand what happened. I was sick, I was drinking. I never meant to hurt you. I gripped my gavel, feeling the familiar fire building in my chest. 20 years of therapy, of building myself into someone unbreakable, and she thought tears would fix everything? The defendants will enter their pleas, or I will enter not guilty pleas on their behalf and we will proceed to trial. The courtroom was electric with tension as Mama continued to sob. But I'd learned long ago that tears from people like her were just another manipulation tactic. Derek, however, was staring at me with something that looked almost like pride. Well, I'll be damned, he said, ignoring his lawyer's frantic gestures to stay quiet. Look what our little princess became. A real judge and everything. Mr. Johnson, you will remain silent or... Our little princess? I interrupted, my voice cutting through the room like ice. I stopped being yours the moment you branded my face with that iron. The courtroom erupted. Reporters who'd come for a routine arraignment suddenly had the story of the decade. The public defender looked like he wanted to disappear. Mama just kept crying. You remember that, don't you, Derek? I continued, standing up behind my bench. How you held that iron against my 14-year-old face while she held my arms down. How you told me I needed to learn my place. His smirk faltered. Now wait just a minute. Bailiff, remove Mr. Johnson from my courtroom. He's disrupting these proceedings. You can't do this. Derek shouted as 2 deputies grabbed his arms. You're supposed to be impartial. This is personal. I smiled then, cold and sharp as winter. You're absolutely right, Mr. Johnson. This is very personal. As they dragged him away, still screaming about unfairness and corruption, I turned my attention to the woman who'd given birth to me and then destroyed me. Mrs. Williams, Do you have anything to say before we proceed? She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Anna, honey, I know I made mistakes. But I'm your mama. I raised you. Doesn't that count for something? The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Every person there was waiting for my response, and I could feel the weight of 20 years of pain pressing down on my shoulders. You didn't raise me, I said quietly. You destroyed me. The woman who raised me was Rita Williams, who picked up the pieces you left behind and helped me become the person sitting before you today. But I'm your mother. No, I said, my voice gaining strength. A mother protects her child. A mother stands between her child and harm. You chose him over me. You held me down while he mutilated my face. You don't get to claim motherhood now. The gavel felt heavy in my hand as I prepared to deliver justice 20 years in the making. The media had turned this into a circus. By lunch break, news vans lined the street outside the courthouse, and my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with interview requests. But I wasn't interested in their story. This was about something much deeper than headlines. I returned to my chambers to find Rita waiting for me, her eyes filled with concern. Baby, I saw the news. Are you okay? I hugged her tightly, breathing in the scent of her perfume that had comforted me through so many dark nights. I'm exactly where I need to be, Aunt Rita. Anna, honey, I know you think this is justice, but what? She deserves mercy? Compassion? Where was that when I was screaming for help? Rita sighed, settling into the chair across from my desk. I'm not saying she deserves anything. I'm saying you do. You deserve peace, not to carry this anger for the rest of your life. Before I could respond, there was a knock on my door. My clerk entered with a grim expression. Judge Williams, Mrs. Williams' attorney, is requesting an emergency meeting. She says she has information about other children. My blood ran cold. What other children? An hour later, I sat across from Sharon Williams and her lawyer in a secure conference room. She looked broken, defeated, nothing like the woman who'd once held such terrifying power over me. There were others, she whispered, unable to meet my eyes. After you left, Derek. He had a temper. We took in foster kids for the money and sometimes what? I demanded, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Sometimes he would lose control. But I never held anyone down again, I swear. I learned my lesson. Her lawyer cleared his throat. My client is willing to provide information about these incidents in exchange for a reduced sentence. I stared at this woman who'd given birth to me, who'd failed me, who'd apparently failed other children too. The rage inside me was so hot I could barely breathe. How many children, Sharon? I don't know exactly. Maybe 4 or 5 over the years. But I always called child services eventually. You always what? Waited until after they were traumatized? Until after Derek had already hurt them? She finally looked up at me and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Genuine remorse. I was weak, Anna. I was scared and weak and I failed you. I failed all of them. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my study, staring at the case files Detective Adams had brought me. 4 children, ranging in age from 8 to 15, all placed in foster care with Sharon and Derek between 1999 and 2015. All removed within 6 months. All bearing the invisible scars that people like us carry forever. I called Detective Adams at midnight. Judge Williams? Is everything all right? I need you to find them. The other children. They deserve to know that someone believes them, that someone cares about what happened to them. Man, that might take some time. Foster records from that era aren't always. I don't care how long it takes. Find them. The next morning, I walked into court carrying the weight of more than just my own pain. I was carrying the pain of 4 other children who'd never gotten their day in court. Sharon looked smaller somehow, as if admitting the truth had literally diminished her. Derek, back in custody and in shackles this time, just glared at me with undisguised hatred. Your Honor, the prosecutor began, given the new information that's come to light, the state is adding charges of child endangerment and conspiracy to commit child abuse. Derek's lawyer immediately objected. Your Honor, these are decades-old allegations with no corroborating evidence. I leaned forward, my voice deadly quiet. Counselor, are you suggesting that my testimony about what these defendants did to me isn't credible evidence? The lawyer's face went pale. No, Your Honor, of course not. I just meant. As I was there. I remember every detail. The smell of burning flesh. the sound of my own screams, the feeling of my mother's hands holding me down while her boyfriend mutilated my face. The courtroom was dead silent. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, staring at me with something between horror and admiration. And if there were other children, I continued, standing up behind my bench, other victims who suffered at the hands of these defendants, then I will make sure they get the justice they deserve. Even if it takes the rest of my life. Derek finally spoke, his voice thick with rage. You always were a vindictive little bitch. This isn't justice, it's revenge. The gavel cracked against the bench like thunder. Bailiff, gag Mr. Johnson. He's forfeited his right to speak in my courtroom. As they fitted him with a restraint, I turned to Sharon. Do you have anything to say before sentencing? She stood slowly, her hands shaking. I'm sorry, Anna. I know it's not enough, but I'm sorry. I looked at her for a long moment. The sentencing hearing lasted 3 days. One by one, Detective Adams had found the other victims, and one by one they came forward to tell their stories. Each testimony was a knife twisting in my chest, because I could have prevented their pain if I'd been braver, if I'd fought harder to make sure Sharon and Derek faced consequences the first time. Keisha, now 25, took the stand with trembling hands. He used cigarettes, she whispered. Always said it was our fault, that we made him do it. Tommy, 22, couldn't even look at Derek. I tried to run away 6 times. He always brought me back. Said nobody would believe me anyway. The twins, Michael and Michelle, now 19, sat in the gallery holding hands like they used to as children. They didn't testify, but their presence spoke volumes. With each story, I felt the weight of my position more acutely. This wasn't just about my pain anymore. This was about a pattern of abuse that had continued for decades because the system had failed to stop them the first time. Your Honor, the prosecutor said during closing arguments, the defendants have shown a clear pattern of child abuse spanning 20 years. They've shown no remorse, taken no responsibility, and given no indication that they wouldn't continue this behavior if released. Sharon's lawyer tried to argue for leniency based on her cooperation, but the evidence was overwhelming. 4 children tortured, 5 if you counted me, and who knows how many others who never came forward. When it came time for victim impact statements, I did something unprecedented. I stepped down from the bench and stood at the podium where I'd heard so many victims tell their stories. 20 years ago, these 2 people taught me what evil looks like. I began, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. They taught me that the people who are supposed to protect you can be the ones who hurt you most. They taught me that pain can be so intense it changes the very structure of who you are. I looked directly at Sharon, who was crying again. But they also taught me something else. They taught me that survival is a choice. That you can let evil destroy you or you can let it forge you into something stronger. Derek was staring at me with pure hatred, but I wasn't talking to him anymore. I was talking to every victim who'd ever felt powerless. I became a judge because of what you did to me. I dedicated my life to protecting children because you failed to protect me. In trying to destroy me, you created your own judge and jury. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Will the defendants please rise for sentencing? Sharon struggled to her feet, her orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her diminished frame. Derek stood defiantly, even in shackles, still carrying that arrogant smirk that had haunted my nightmares for 20 years. I looked down at them from my bench, feeling the full weight of my authority, of the journey that had brought me to this moment. Every sleepless night studying law, every case I'd prosecuted, every child I'd fought for had led to this. Derek Johnson, you have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit child abuse, child endangerment, fraud, identity theft, and drug trafficking. But more than that, you are guilty of stealing innocence from children who trusted the adults in their lives to protect them. His lawyer started to object, but I cut him off with a look. You branded my face when I was 14 years old. You tortured 4 other children over the span of 15 years. You showed no mercy, no remorse, no recognition that your actions had consequences. Therefore, this court will show you the same consideration you showed those children. I paused, savoring the moment I dreamed of for 2 decades. I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Derek's composure finally cracked. You can't do this. This is personal. You're not supposed to be personal. Bailiff, remove Mr. Johnson from my courtroom. He's served his purpose here. As they dragged him away, still screaming about injustice, I turned to Sharon. The woman who'd given birth to me, who'd sung me lullabies, who'd held my arms while her boyfriend destroyed my face. Sharon Williams, you present a more complex case. You cooperated with authorities, you showed remorse, you helped us find other victims. But you also made a choice 20 years ago that can never be undone. She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. Please, Anna. Please. I know I failed you, but I'm still your mother. I leaned forward, my voice soft but deadly. A mother protects her child. A mother stands between her child and danger. A mother doesn't hold her daughter down while someone burns her face. You stopped being my mother the moment you chose him over me. The courtroom was silent except for her crying. I sentence you to 25 years in prison. You'll be eligible for parole in 15 years when you're 73 years old. Maybe by then you'll understand what you stole from me. Anna, please. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell with finality, echoing through the courtroom like a period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. 6 months later, I stood in the courthouse garden where a memorial had been erected for child abuse survivors. The inscription read, "For those whose voices were silenced, and those who found the strength to speak." Rita had suggested it, and the city had unanimously approved the funding. Detective Adams found me there, holding a file I'd been expecting. "All 5 of them are doing well," he said, handing me the updates on the other victims. "Keisha just graduated nursing school. Tommy's getting married next month. The twins are both in college." I smiled, feeling something I hadn't experienced in 20 years. Peace. They survived. So did you, Judge Williams. More than survived, you thrived. That evening, I sat in my study writing a letter I'd been putting off for months. It was addressed to the Honorable Justice Department, requesting a transfer to family court, where I could focus specifically on child welfare cases. My phone rang. "Rita, how are you feeling, baby?" "Free," I said and meant it. "For the first time in 20 years I feel free. Your mama called me today from prison." I tensed. What did she want? To ask me to tell you she understands why you did what you did. She said she's proud of who you became. I laughed, but this time it wasn't bitter. Too little, too late. Maybe. But Anna, honey, forgiveness isn't for her. It's for you. I looked at my reflection in the window, seeing not the scarred child I used to be, but the strong woman I'd become. The scars were still there if you knew where to look, but they weren't ugly anymore. They were proof of survival, evidence of strength, reminders that some fires don't destroy, they forge. I forgave her a long time ago, Aunt Rita. But forgiving someone doesn't mean letting them back into your life. It just means not letting them control your life anymore. That night, for the first time in 20 years, I slept peacefully. No nightmares, no phantom burns on my face, no dreams of being held down and powerless. I'd spent 2 decades building myself into someone who could face my demons and win. And when the moment came, when I sat behind that bench with the power of justice in my hands, I'd done what that scared 14-year-old girl had always dreamed of doing. I'd won. Not just the case, but the war for my own soul. Justice, it turned out, was the best revenge of all. And mercy? Mercy was getting to sleep peacefully at night, knowing that no other child would suffer at their hands. I was Judge Anna Williams. I was a survivor. And I was finally, completely, utterly free. So what do you think? Was Anna completely in the right, or did they throw away their family over pride? I want to hear every perspective in the comments below. And if you can't get enough of these intense family showdowns, make sure you're subscribed. I've got stories that'll make this one look tame.